Connor, what I want to put to you straight away now that you're here, I was bringing this up a wee bit earlier, but I was saying to Trev, I think the one bomb scare I still have at the minute is the fact that Russell Martin hasn't been taken, and I'm a wee bit worried we might appoint him. Do you think, Connor, there's any risk that these guys do go for him, or do you think that's nothing to be concerned about? It's going to be Ancelotti. Just I have heard a few other Bears mentioning that and being a wee bit worried about it, you know?
Well, I mean, look, as long as we've not made any announcement or made an appointment, there's always the risk. I mean, any of the candidates that have been interviewed and mentioned could be appointed. I mean, look, personally, I would not like to see Russell Martin being appointed. I don't think many people would. That being said, I think that just comes down to, again, a bit of lack of experience, a bit of the way it went sort of off the rails for him at Southampton this season before he got sacked. Now, don't get me wrong, they went down anyway. They were poor regardless of whether he was in the dugout or not. And his defence, I don't think they had done enough in the summer to maintain a position in the Premier League. The issue for Rangers is that we can't afford to be bringing in a manager like Russell Martin and then thinking things can take a year, 2, 3 years. We're past that point now, and that's the major difference between when we brought Gerrard in and now, is that Steven Gerrard was given that time. He was given 3 years, and let's not forget that the year before we had won the title, when that season got curtailed in the January, he had us sitting 13 points behind Celtic because his tenure to that point had followed a pattern of starting well in the first half of the season, and then our arses were collapsing in January constantly under Gerrard. For the first few years until he eventually got it right in his last full season and winning the title. I don't think we've got the luxury of doing that this time. It needs to be somebody that can hit the ground running. The investment's going to be there. We heard that yesterday. So you need to make sure that investment's going to the right person. And that's the key here. Who you're trusting with the purse strings to make the right signings and the right decisions. And obviously assuming that they'd be working alongside Nils Coppin as well, and making those calls. So you need somebody who can also got with him, which is why I imagine he's probably going to have a say in this as well. He's the forgotten man in all this, but he will no doubt have a view on it, and have had those conversations with Kavanagh and with Stewart, because whoever's appointed is going to be working with him day to day. That they're going to be closely together, so they're going to have to be able to get on. Personally, I think it's probably going to be Ancelotti. I just don't know. I think now that the announcement of the takeover has been made, I think this week at some point they will announce the manager. I'd be very surprised if they didn't, and then that will obviously alleviate people's worries about somebody like Russell Martin, unless it is Russell Martin that's announced, of course.
Don't say that. Sorry, Calum, really quickly. See on come back to Connor's point. See, in terms of the investment thing he was mentioning, like with 20 million, we need to bear in mind that while majority of it will probably go to the first team because it's required, they said on and off the park, or I'm paraphrasing, so it's an immediate £20 million investment to the club as a whole. So we very well may have a small percentage of that spent in other things. If we sell Rico Raskin and all that, which I hope we don't, we will bring in more money. But don't expect the full 20 million to go all on the squad just for the sake of it. A wee bit might not. So,
with regards to the 20 million, obviously we've seen a lot of Celtic fans I've seen quite a lot of them making fun of that, saying, "Oh, only 20 million to invest in the squad." I think the counter I've seen from Rangers fans, people saying, "Look, that's just the initial amount they're putting in. It's going to be a bit. Obviously, it's going to be more." I've also seen people saying it was like upwards of 50 million to buy the 51% or something like that. It was a significant sum of money. But what's your take on that initial figure? We've been told that it's 20 million they're putting in for the first team squad straight away. Do you take that as good news? A wee bit underwhelmed by that? Or maybe take that to you, Connor, to start off. What's your whole take on the 20 million initial investment that was announced yesterday? And good or bad for Rangers overall?
Well, I mean, ultimately, given the fact that we're in the Scottish League, 20 million quid is That's quite a substantial figure for our league. Now, you look at last summer, Celtic spent that on just 2 players, with Arne Engels and Adam Ida. And despite the fact that they were a double this season, you could argue quite strongly a case for whether or not both of them have thus far repaid that amount of money. Now, that would suggest to me that I don't see Celtic going out and having the same splurge this summer that they did last season. They'll no doubt bring players in, but they're not going to go and spend £9-10 million on an individual player again. So that gives us the opportunity to play a little bit of catch up. And look, the problem, I mean, you say it there about all the Celtic fans not want to have a go online. The fact of the matter is, these are the same people who said that this takeover was never going to happen. These are the same people who apparently are in the know about everything to do with Rangers and are experts in their own minds on these types of things. When the reality is they haven't got a clue. It's, as Dougal said, £75 million to buy the 51%, which is what they paid, plus an initial £20 million investment into the club. That makes it £95 million altogether that they're actually spending here. The £20 million is what seems to get lost in it or deliberately ignored by those who want to denigrate it. Is that £20 million is a direct investment into the club, into the squad. That's what that £20 million is. That's, in effect, that's probably our transfer budget for this summer. Now, that's a pretty good thing when you consider the last couple of seasons. We've not exactly had that kind of transfer budget, albeit last year they kept telling us they didn't have money, and then seemingly they found £4.5 million down the back of the sofa to sign Bayrami on the final. It was the final day, despite telling us there was no money there. So that was kind of a weird situation. Whereas at least this year we know the picture, and that's going to help any manager. So, as far as I'm concerned, it's a good start. And I just think there are some people out there who can't accept that they got it wrong when they said this takeover wasn't going to happen, and are now looking for other ways to downplay it. I mean, I've seen some people try to compare it to Hearts, going, "Oh, they're putting £20 million into the Rangers. Tony Bloom's putting £10 million into Hearts." Again, totally different circumstances. Tony Bloom's not taking over Hearts. He's not buying a majority sharehold in Hearts. He's buying a sharehold, sure, but not a majority one. And that £10 million is basically all the investment he will make in Hearts. Whereas, as Dougal's pointed out, you're looking at about £95 million on day one that the 49ers have obviously put in terms of for what they've had to spend to buy their 51% share, and then the 20 million into the squad. I mean, it really isn't that difficult if you've got a couple of brain cells to rub together.